call to order for the Bartlett Economic Development Commission meeting of March 13th, 2003. Tony, may I have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Jerry Cabasco,
Here.
Kirsten Erickson,
Here.
Robert Perry,
Here.
Bruce Suffern,
Here.
Annette Gutenkopf.
Here.
Adam Lewinsky is not here yet. I believe he's on his way. Robert Gorski.
Here.
Okay, thank you for coming. We do have a quorum.
Okay, we have the approval of the previous minutes from January 9th, 2023. Do we have any discussion on the minutes?
No.
I motion that we approve the January 9th, 2023 minutes. I'll second.
If not, do we have a motion to approve?
I approve.
Yeah. I did the first, he did the second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain. I wasn't there.
I wasn't there.
Did you have a point of discussion?
No, I have to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, two abstains.
Okay, motion carries to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. We have a new commissioner tonight, Bruce Suffern.
Would be me.
He previously was a commissioner. I don't remember quite when, but he was with us for a while.
Was in the century of, or the
valuable
decade of the
contributions.
80s. The 80s I was on this, a little while ago.
A little while ago. Well,
Welcome back.
I think everybody here knows Bruce, so he's a
Yeah.
longtime resident and business owner. So we welcome him back to the commission.
Thank you.
And now we can open up the comments to the public. Don't see anybody out there, so we'll skip that. Now for the biggie tonight, the branding campaign proposals. We have 3 proposals that we're going to discuss tonight, and I doubt we're going to come to a conclusion to make a recommendation based on the voluminous data we have before us. So, Tony, you want to kick it off?
Yes,
Make an
voluminous is a good word to describe it. And for the benefit of our newest commissioner, but most longtime downtown business owner, I'm going to do a quick refresher. And then what I'm going to do is kind of quickly scoot through these 3 that we're have before you tonight. So as a reminder, the branding strategy came up as part of the village's strategic plan over the past several years. One of the short-term complex goals for the village based on a 1 to 3 year timeline, along with filling some key vacancies and refining our incentive programs and trying to attract a grocery store to town. One of our goals was to develop a community branding plan.
Okay.
So for those of you on the EDC, for the past several years, you'll recall we brought it up as a discussion. And also for the record, Commissioner Lewinsky is present, so we're 7 for 7 tonight.
Hey, how you doing?
We had a few meetings in 2021 and a few last year where we kind of touched upon the idea of doing a rebranding of the village. We had some nice discussions about it, and ultimately what we determined was that it was, not the kind of thing where you just hire somebody to do a new logo and slogan like Never Far Away, which, by the way, was one of my first projects on the EDC in 2005. 2005. So time to refresh that. And what we did was we put together a request for proposals, also that the EDC weighed in on a few times. We kept tweaking it and improving it. I based it off of RFPs that some other local communities had done in the past few years. We brought it before the village board late last year. The village attorney improved it and rewrote it, added a lot of language to it. And ultimately, what we did was we issued not just a request for proposals, we call it a request for qualifications / request for proposals. So we issued that late last year. The due date was originally going to be near the end of last year, and we extended it for about 3 weeks or so, because number one, we had to do a few minor tweaks and improvements to it, and also there were so many questions flooding in that I put together an addendum doing my best to answer all those questions. So what finally transpired was that we received 7 proposals ranging in scope from local people, all the way to branding agencies out of state. We received a total of 7. A group of us met probably about a month to 6 weeks ago to whittle it down to a more manageable 3 proposals to bring before the Economic Development Commission for consideration. As Chairman Cabasco said, it's voluminous, but ultimately what we would like to get from the EDC, if not tonight, then at the next meeting, would be a recommendation as to which one of the 3 we can always bring. Part of the RFP was letting them know that they might be required to appear before the EDC and/or the village board to go over their qualifications and strategy a little bit more. But enough with the introduction, but that's the impetus behind these 3 detailed, very colorful proposals that you have before you tonight. So what I'm going to do is fairly quickly go through them, just with some tabs that I put on there today to bring to your attention. And also, let me remark that this is on alphabetical basis. I'm not insinuating one over another by presenting them in a certain order. So we're starting off with A5. Okay, you all have paper packets here in front of you. So A5, if you flip to page just 3, you can see that they're basically a full-service branding, advertising, video, SEO, social media firm. Of the 3, I will just mention, but it comes later on in their proposal. It's probably the best known of the agencies that you have before you tonight. I flipped over to pages 8 and 9 that goes over their, well, really, they have several pages about their, the team that they have in place. But John Harris is the principal of the firm. They have a creative director who I've met before, Fletcher Martin. And what I wanted to point out about these pages just is that their municipal experience is vast. Our neighboring community that went through a rebranding probably 3 or 4 years ago, they came up with a logo of all different colors and says it's a global village, Hanover Park. They came up with that logo and slogan and branding campaign. But you can see they've done many towns around here, New Lenox, Richton Park, Oak Park, Woodstock. Anyway, they have a lot of municipal experience. Flipping through to pages 14 and 15 before they get into the whole, the preliminary project plan you have there. If you could go to the next page, 15, Joey. You see, before they get into their whole background and all the examples and their process, you can see that basically their quote comes to kind of a large, kind of a wide range, 65,000 to 80,000. But when you'll see this with all three of the submittals, they break down different elements of it. I've asked them to do that not only in the RFP, but when I spoke with every agency, in case it comes to the point where the board may want to pick and choose some elements of it. Maybe don't want to spend 80,000, but maybe want to do 6 to 7, and then a campaign concept, and then videos or something like that. So obviously, there's the opportunity there to do some rebranding of the village without spending $80,000, okay? If you could just even flip to the next page, Joey. I like this one. Most of the submittals have something like this and shows examples of some of the things that they've done locally. And like you can see, they've done LaGrange and Barrington and Oak Park. And there's that Hanover Park, America's Global Village up in the upper right. That's the one I see every day when I'm driving through there. So like I said, they have vast municipal experience. And I don't even know what page, Joey, but if you could flip many pages to where it gets to clear, let's see. You showed the real Woodstock. If you can go a little further, I like the Crystal Lake one a lot. They have some branding. Like I said, it's dozens of pages of examples. So we're not going to flip through 86 pages of this. I just wanted to point out Freeport, Woodstock, and the one that I thought was kind of neat was the Clearly Crystal Lake. And that's kind of near the end, I guess. That's the very end. Clearly Crystal Lake, you see that's kind of some pretty nice branding that they've done for that community. A nice rebranding of their website. And then Niles, kind of simplistic for the Niles one, but I mean, it's nice branding as well. You can see some banners that they did. So it's, like I said, it's a lot of information, but I wanted you to leave here, at least tonight, before you might further consider it in terms of the capabilities of these different firms and the ballpark of what it might cost. So the next one we're going over is a branding firm called Chandler Thinks. They're based out of Franklin, Tennessee. Joe, if you would go to what they call page 5 on theirs. Yep, that page right there. It kind of jumped out at me looking at that today, that their team members have been part of more than 250 placemaking projects in their careers. So again, one of the criteria for this request for proposals was to have prior municipal experience, so that doesn't, that actually, it's kind of a specialization. It's not that these firms don't work for entities that aren't local governments or not-for-profits, but because of the unique nature of marketing a community rather than like some kind of product or service. And the process we go through, including economic development commissions and budgeting and branding and village board, there's not like one person who goes, okay, yeah, we're gonna go with this guy. It's an ongoing process where you have to have some expertise and experience in engaging with the community. Obviously, it's a lot different than working with a small or large business. So, Joey, if you could go to what they call page 16. Or, you know, go back, I'm sorry, to the list of, yeah, that's fine. Because I just wanted to point out that the only community around here that they listed was Northfield, but they've got a lot of nice, you know, a lot of towns that have good branding and marketing, quite frankly, like Cedarburg, Wisconsin, and Carlsbad, California, and St. Charles, Missouri. So you can see that they're more of, not even regional, they're a national branding firm. You go through the next few pages and it details their strategy. I wanted to just point out Cedarburg, Wisconsin, that's at about page 31. Put a little tab over there. Just from being a person who spent many years traveling and vacationing in Wisconsin, I know Cedarburg always has like a very good image, and they're you can see how they went through the logo development for them as one of their examples. It's up on the screen too, Commissioner Pear, if you want to look up. We're going to flip a few more pages once again and get to the meat and potatoes of this on page 38 and 39. So you can see also that they've broken down their price in terms of research strategy, creative, and planning. They do include travel costs in their submittal. So you can see that what they would consider phase one, which is basically going through the process of coming up with a brand. The creative and research phase of it is about $65,000. And if you go to the next page, Joey, they present another phase of the implementation, which can go all the way up to six figures, 77,000 to 105. Keeping in mind that the bulk of that is for video production and various seasonal shoots for photography, asset development, digital advertising, social graphics. So I guess you would say that one's on the pricier side of the three that we're presenting to you, but an agency that has more experience throughout the entire country in a lot of mid-sized communities and even some larger ones. Okay, I'm going to go to the third one for McD or McDermott, I believe. This is a agency based out of downstate Illinois, but has some other locations as well. And why don't we flip to what they call page 7, branding the essence. They talk about, this shows a couple of their local projects. The McHenry County one kind of jumped out at us when we saw that one as one that's a pretty well-known branding campaign in this area the past few years. They also have Havana, Illinois, and Galesburg, Illinois, among others. If you could flip a few pages to what they call 16, Joey. That's their page with all the logos of the different communities that they've done, including some around here. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that Explore Elgin area, marketing and branding. I know I get a lot of emails from them and a lot of social media information from them. McHenry, like I mentioned, a lot of downstate communities. But you can see they have a lot of experience here in Illinois and some, mostly around like McHenry County and further west, Freeport. Okay, Joey, my next tab Again, goes all the way to page 4. In between, I'm skipping a lot, but these proposals all basically detail the process that they'll go through in terms of engaging with residents, doing research, learning about the community, not really imposing their thoughts on what learning about the town first, basically kind of studying the strengths and unique attributes of Bartlett while they come up and doing stakeholder meetings before they come up with these, some of their ideas for branding. But I want to flip all the way to page 40. There you see all their, this gets into their methodology. Page 40 has their price. So as you can see, they too break it down by planning and research that they include, like I just mentioned, interviews, SWOT analysis, preliminary research for 4,500. Phase 2 is the actual brand development, and they break that down nicely into logo and tagline, standards manual for 15,500. So the phase 1 and 2, keeping in mind, this really is coming up with like logos and tagline and brand identity. This isn't doing the whole thing with producing videos and everything like that. So that phase comes out to 20,000. Then you go to the next page and they break it down a little further. Video development, that they have 3 in there. That was part of the RFP. We wanted to have them do 3 or 4 videos, okay? We talked about that at the EDC a little bit, something for come visit Bartlett, more of a tourism type of thing with all our restaurants and our brewery coming and all that kind of stuff. We wanted maybe a quality of life type of video, so we want to have some flexibility in terms of the types of videos that we're going to produce. Digital marketing campaign, this is where we really get some really good reach through Google, Facebook, Instagram, pay-per-click, stuff like that, for about 18,500. And so you can see that, again, it would come out to give or take 60,000, broken down into the 3 phases. The phase 1, which comes out to about 20, the video development that comes out to 16 to 20,000, then about $18,000 for a 6-month digital marketing campaign. Keep in mind, this is all the beginning phase of a branding campaign. We would discuss it at the EDC. We would look at, what kind of feedback are we getting? What kind of engagement are we getting? But it's something that we're not looking at starting just to do this one-time shot and then leave it. After that, we're looking for somebody who we feel we could be comfortable with engaging over a period of multiple years. Somebody who could do a great video for our Oktoberfest. Somebody who could do a great video and promotion for Marion Bright. If we end up with a huge vacancy that we need to fill somewhere, somebody who can do a nice video on social media about, why don't you come, open your restaurant here in town or your industrial. We're basically, as I'll tell you later, we're basically filled in industrial, but this, we'll probably end up using this branding agency for all different types of marketing initiatives and branding. We want some flexibility. We want to be able to adjust it. You've all been in Bartlett for a long time, so you can see that sometimes there's a specific challenge or issue you need to address, and we want to have the ability to be able to do that better from a marketing standpoint. So I've been talking about branding for about 20 minutes. I know there was just one more page I had. No, we hit that last page. Okay. So, like I said, there's 3. Be glad that I didn't go through every page of 7 of them, because that would take about 7 hours. But wanted to put this before you, get some of your thoughts on it. And ultimately, we'd like to see if we can get some consensus among the commission to see if there's one that you think stands out above the other and you think we could be comfortable with. Did you?
I do have a. I'll start with a question.
Sure.
So, first of all, everybody gave references. Did the committee, when they got together, also check references when they pulled together these 3 out of the 7?
A couple of them, but not all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, the references pan out. I think that's something before, when you narrow it down to one, hopefully we'll drill it down more to the references. But, yeah, they all check out.
Okay.
Can I assume that all 3 of these candidates fit within the budget requirements of the village?
I'm going to say that we're budgeting for it. I think they came up a little higher than we had originally anticipated. There were some agencies that didn't even submit because they said they couldn't get it under 6 figures. So, yeah, these are very professional agencies, and we'll budget appropriately. We were putting together the budget right now. Scott puts together the economic development budget with me.
Given the fact that we're on a one-year budget cycle, if the EDC and the board were to like one of the proposals in front of you tonight, we would talk to them, and then we would present budget numbers to the board the following years, so we could make sure that it's appropriately budgeted for. But the short answer is yes, of course.
What criteria did you use for culling out the candidates?
Mostly some of the success that they've had in their different communities that they've worked for, how basically that they checked a lot of the boxes. Some of them didn't have as much experience as others. I would say generally a good mix of a real professional submittal that ticked all the boxes, relevant experience in communities that we can identify, like we mentioned, Oak Park and McHenry and things that we've seen that have been successful in this area, along with price. We didn't bring any here that were $125,000 for phase 1 or something like that in front of you. So I think these 3 stood out. One of them really didn't hit all the qualifying marks.
Did these 3 candidates have the most background and history with working with local Illinois communities?
Well, two of them did. The one Chandler thinks is really more of a national. They're based out of Tennessee, and you see they have customers in California and New Jersey and Washington, all over the whole country. A5 is the one that has the most experience, municipal experience in Illinois of any of the submittals. And then McD, for the price and the team that they have in place, really stood out on those counts.
So let me,
They were more acceptable from a cost value estimation? McD?
I mean, that's something that I would want the EDC to weigh in on, but I would say that was one of the reasons that we are putting them in front of you. Yeah.
I had a few things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, everyone. So outside of the village trustee role, I have a marketing and communication background, and every place that I have worked, I've gone through a rebrand. And one of the things I like to bring up with that is a rebrand is more than just the logo and the visuals that you see. It's about like how you're going to internally operate as well, and how you're going to talk about it, communicate what your brand is externally in order to, help bring in our case, new businesses, residents outside of Bartlett understand who we are, so they want to come to our events and things like that. One thing I look for in any of these proposals is their background in public relations, because I think that's a huge component to this, as well as the market research component. I think it's good to, and there's several of these that have that. They can do the research, the focus groups, the interviews, and they're going to talk about like market position or what potential that Bartlett has. And I think that's important information that we would want to put together. In regards to the pricing, kind of the mix and match, I think any of these we can kind of take a look at and be like, this is where we need to tweak this, or, we don't really need them to do all the work in this area because we have the resources here for someone to do that, but I'm definitely interested in like the market position, the potential, information like that. And as an example, when we had, I had a contact that was interested in a location in Bartlett for a restaurant. Well, Scott and I were kind of trying to throw things together because they had questions. And something like this would give us polished communication to give to an entrepreneur, restaurateur who is interested in coming to Bartlett and have all that information that the village then can pass on. And I know we feel like we're filling up a lot of spaces, but we have to think about changeover, redevelopment, things like that, and how we're positioning ourselves for the future. So it's not just something for right now, but thinking, 10 years, what is it going to be like here, and how are we pushing that messaging out? So if there's any questions on branding, like I said, every place I have worked, I've gone through a rebrand and have seen the power. Right now I'm at a CPA and financial advisory firm, and it has completely changed the way that we go to market and how we communicate with prospects and clients.
Is there any, with any of these groups here, some statistical data that after they've rebranded that, X percent of growth in, pick a category, right? But has anything been presented to you from a statistical standpoint that says we've rebranded and we've achieved X?
I mean, these are the submittals or the proposals in response to what we had put out. So everything that you see, anything that they responded to is what you see in these documents.
I understand that, but you talked about, hey, they did this and it's successful, so how do we quantify that?
I mean, it's not part of marketing. It doesn't always directly correlate to saying it raised sales in Woodstock by 10%. I mean, it raises, over the long run, it raises kind of the image of a community. It attracts, it basically improves the identity and the position of the community for tourism, for business profile, that kind of thing. I know that you're looking for more tangible statistics than that, but I mean, what we have before us is their submittals, and then as you ask the references, they're happy with the work that they've done. Mm-hmm. I don't have an answer of if it boosted tourism by X amount,
okay,
Y amount.
So there are some, there's some quantitative data in these that I saw. One thing in marketing, like especially when you're running a marketing campaign, I never promise a new client. I do set goals around how many people I can bring into the funnel with the campaigns, and because marketing is not the business development, so there's the part of closing it out. So when you're running a campaign, you focus on how many people you can get into the funnel. One thing that you could measure in here, or we could ask, is like, I know there was like the digital or search engine optimization in here. If we went back and asked the question, or we could ask that of the references, like how many more visits did you get to the website you know, a year later. And I would say you'd want someone who had rebranded and had at least a year with that new brand, because it's a tool, and it's a tool that we're going to use, so we would need to have some time to see. But I think that's a good question to ask, how we can measure, and it might be different than what we're initially thinking. Like you said, we're not gonna be able to say like, oh, boosted tourism right away. Like, it's going to be something over time. But I noticed that there were some numbers in here. I don't know if those are the ones that like looking at this one, I'm not sure it's the one I totally would ask for, but we could probably ask that some of the references. One of the things I noticed in here was A5 and McDaniels both had real Woodstock, and I would want to know what their roles in that were. Like, they both put that in there. Was one more on the research and marketing side, and someone was more on the design side, but that's something I think we need to ask.
So the word brand, when I think about the word brand, it brings to mind Coca-Cola, McDonald's, a brand name that's known throughout the country, maybe the world. I don't understand what the village is trying to accomplish by branding a village. Could you explain that?
Yeah, we talked about this a lot about a year and a half ago, a few months in a row, that it's something that we would utilize. Think of it as a marketing tool that could be used in various capacities, okay? So, for instance, let's say when the years that we talked about filling the Dominics here, or trying to fill Gorski's or something like that. In that respect, you use branding to target certain types of businesses. You use the logo, you use it in your marketing campaign, you need to be consistent with it. It has to be a brand that reflects your community. You know, we're not gonna brand ourselves in some way that's untrue. It's something, when you're competing, I always say economic development is like sports. It's a team sport, and it's also competitive. And when you're competing for attention, you want something kind of striking and memorable, something that kind of gets somebody's interest, even if you just have a few seconds for that. Or it can be something that, you know, has a very deep meaning and that you want to utilize in such a way to promote a certain event or a certain, I mean, it can be used in a number of ways. So what's the goal? Increase tourism and supporting the two basic tenets of economic development, business attraction and business retention. So we're also using this for events, right? We talk about events a lot at EDC. We're going to use our branding to help brand our events. Cocoa Crawl, Oktoberfest, 4th of July, arts festivals, whatever. You know, so it can be used in a number of ways. You're going to see it like these towns use it. We're not going to do TV commercials about it or anything. Maybe we will. But, you know, it's going to be used for general marketing, business attraction, business retention, and tourism.
And just to add to what Tony said, I mean, why a village is so different than Coca-Cola, because you can look at your marketing brand and say, well, our sales went up X%. Marketing a village is kind of marketing a way of life. As the business parks grew and developed, and a lot of people that would come in and meet with Tony and our mayor, they wouldn't be coming in to say, well, there's X amount of square feet, I have X amount of employees. They also wanted to know, a lot of them live here now. Well, do I want to live here? Is this a place where I want my kids to grow up? Do I feel good about the town? So when somebody comes in here, a lot of the times, whether it's even a small mom and pop or one of the larger corporations, we're selling a feeling to them. And that's kind of what separates, you know, branding government versus branding, you know, somebody who's selling widgets. It's all encompassing as opposed to just, you know, Nike shoes, for example. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what we want these folks to do, whom we pick. We want them to sell an overall global perspective of life. And that's kind of what separates government branding from private sector branding, if that makes sense.
Who has seen how South Elgin has changed by the river? So seeing what we can go after. And that's what prompted all of the change that is going down there right now, is that they paid to put this marketing study together, and they were able to target the right kind of businesses. And now they have like a tasting room, brewery/tasting room. They're talking about like the different restaurants. So they're contacting them, he was going over like all the different things that were changing. Because of that, they had that plan in place and they were able to target the right type of people that would open a business there. Yeah, so I think like when you think like, you're thinking like international brands, yes, but like think about even how Hanover Park has changed in the Ontarionville area and what they're trying to do. And I think that's kind of we're bigger than that, but the kind of the level way to think. And same with Cedarburg that you mentioned. So like their brand, obviously very historical looking. And so a lot of the businesses they're bringing in are antiques or little like bakeries that are there. Another village in Wisconsin, Delafield, you know, they had their vision for the buildings. All their buildings have like a certain look to it. So they go after that brand and they have like the same kind of little stores coming in. So it's creating a cohesive look.
There are some results in here. I mean, when you look at A5 and you go into their stuff, I mean, A5 is really interesting because, like you said, especially Stephanie, you know, Hanover Park, Oak Park, Woodstock, Mundelein, Barrington, so these are all brands we've seen and we're familiar with. But if you go to A5's proposal, when you're on pages like 18 and 19, they're actually talking about some of those things that were widgets that they were able to move. Their Facebook followers, they had no Facebook presence. They went from 0 to 13,393. Their Instagram followers, they talk about their web. So they're bringing things in here. They talked about the sales tax revenue, that it increased by 13.3%. So, I mean, this is just our first blush of looking at it, but I think if we dig into some of them, you will see some results, because as I'm flipping through this for A5, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool, and they kind of know this area already. I like that they've already researched our neighbors, so they kind of have a little bit more of a feel of us than like that national one with Chandler, because they just seem so big, and it's nice, but there was only one that was near us. I kind of like that these guys are in Chicago, that they've seen things, so I feel it's interesting to look at that.
A5's got a lot more statistical type of mindset. You can tell just flipping through it. There's three choices here, right, guys? There's a national, a regional-ish, downstate, it looks like, and then something regional, local. And I think that's really all we got. They're all going to be professional, I think, and that's what we're choosing between. Who's going to be easiest to work with? Who's going to do the best job for us? The downside of A5, who 100%, if I have to take a vote today, that's who I'd go with. The only thing I would think of is it just another cookie cutter, you know, where they're not going to give it their all for Bartlett, because we're just another one of many that they have right here. So we might not be unique there. But the rest of it, I think A5's proposal just looks better. And they're local, and I think that one makes no sense.
So, as Jerry alluded to from the beginning, is that there's a lot of information that's very daunting. And I think one of the ways that would help us all as a commission here simplify this is to perhaps consider eliminating one of the three and just focus on the other two.
I agree.
And so with that, I would like to make a motion to eliminate Chandler Thinks and just focus on the other two.
I would agree that they would be my third choice as well.
Second.
I'm sorry?
Second the motion.
Oh, I second the motion, I'm sorry. If that's a motion, to eliminate
Did
one?
make a motion.
Is everyone good with that thought process, or does anyone need to talk that through, going down to 2 before we do a motion?
Makes sense.
Well, the
I
motion's-
think it makes sense, too. All right, then go to call the motions.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yep, Adam, second.
Want to take a roll call on that, Tony?
Yes.
I like a half step.
Kirsten Erickson,
Yes.
Bruce Suffern,
Yes.
Adam Luensky,
Yes.
Robert Perry,
Yes.
Gary Kabasco,
I'm going to abstain on that.
abstain. Annette Gudenkauf? Yes. And Robert Gorski?
Yes.
Okay, so we've
Motion
eliminated,
carries.
I'm sorry?
The motion carries.
Yep. So, okay, it's down to 2 local firms.
I had a question. So Stephanie, you were referring to your experience and with you and Scott trying to get the restaurant to come to Bartlett. What existing demographics do we have in-house that we would hand over to an agency? Population, business breakdown,
Yes,
density, you know,
all of the above. We subscribe to S3 and other third-party sources. One of the, unfortunately, you missed, I do a report also that was part of this later tonight that talks about economic indicators. It brings in a lot of the different information sources that we use, so you know we have all of them. Education, income broken down, ethnicity.
and how
where
is,
people
how is
work.
that now packaged when someone is inquiring about coming to Bartlett?
It's usually given to them pretty much up front, and we can customize the information that we send to people kind of based on what it is that they're looking for.
And would it be possible to see an example of that sometime, of what you have now?
I could give you more information than you'd ever want to look at.
Yeah, this is right down his alley. He's gonna love redoing this.
Well, just an example.
Honestly, it's, and that's a really good question. Honestly, it's customized to the situation, where they're going, what they're doing. I'll give you a good definitive example of that.
Yeah.
I don't know, Tony, if you recall, at least since I've been working with Tony, we've never had a company or a business ask about churches. How many churches do you have? Where are they? What kind are they? And when Culver's came in, they were very interested in that. That was one of their primary questions. They wanted to know about the church community we had in Bartlett. And that was one of the barometers they used to come here. We had never used that before because nobody's ever asked. So it depends on the situation. I mean, there's probably, when you ask what kind of information we give a business, we've probably put together, I mean, hundreds of different scenarios with maps and certain demographics. It's different for everybody.
Yeah, and any good town will do that, and we've done it the whole time I've been here.
So beyond what you have right now, which sounds like it's very good, what more would this do?
Well, this is kind of more of the marketing aspect of it, not just giving information to people who call us, but this is kind of upgrading.
Soliciting.
Yeah, right. This is kind of upgrading our social media game and our video game and really, I mean, I'm going to use Oktoberfest as an example because I went to it and worked at it. It was the very first year. A lot of our staff here put a lot of work into it. It was something that I think everybody could agree on was successful. Now, imagine us doing like more videos about it and pushing it out on social media to other communities or more print ads somewhere else. We could promote events more with this. We could have more diners come to dine in downtown Bartlett, something you're very aware of and involved with your new restaurant that you've been working with. One of the big things we want to do that at least on my end, I want to do more branding on is dine in Bartlett, dine in downtown Bartlett, visit downtown Bartlett. This could be used to help attract shoppers from out of town. Have you ever heard people from I was gonna say from out of town, but even in Bartlett and say, oh, there's nowhere to go in downtown Bartlett, there's nowhere to eat? Somebody told me that last week. And so I start rattling off, what about this place? What about that place? What about this place? Oh, never heard of it. So, you know, I guess on a long answer to your question, I mean, this won't just be the restaurant that calls, what information can you have? Any town you call is gonna give you all the information you want. This is more to outbound, to
both the general consumer and the investor.
yeah, I mean, we just did a Best Burger in Bartlett contest in February.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's another nice kind of thing you could use branding for. We did good branding internally. We had nice ads. Joey put together those ads that you saw for
Very
that.
nice, yeah.
And, you know, we could use branding to get the reach further on that as well, to get some people from nearby towns coming to try the Best
Why don't we just have Joey do it?
How much are you gonna charge?
That's a lot. No, seriously, so we're down to 2, right?
Right.
And it's, one is they seem to be just more rural areas, with a few exceptions here as I'm looking, and the other ones seems more cookie cutter what we are, so it's, how do we want to differentiate that is?
So I'd like to call attention for 13 and 14 of the McDaniels proposal, because here's what I suspect between A5 and McDaniels. I suspect A5 was hired, and again, this is just my best guess until we verify it, but I think A5 was probably hired for the visual branding, the super creative part, and McDaniels did the digital services and public relations for it. That's my best
Oh,
guess.
you mean for that one specific?
Because they both have Woodstock in there.
Right.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the public relations and the digital part are going to be even more important than what the visuals turn out to be. I think that's going to be the power in bringing people from outside of Bartlett, because where do you go now to look for something to do for the most part? You go online. I think placement, I think getting Bartlett placement outside of the edges of our community is going to be important. If anyone is on Facebook, there's this only in your state, and I see placement all the time for small restaurants in small towns, and you know, they're trying to bring people in that way. It's like, here's the best barbecue place, you know, and it's this little tiny place like out in Hinckley, right? So I think the public relations, the placement of getting our name outside, having a Best Burger in Bartlett, having something get placed in other newspapers and other communities to bring people in, I think that's the power in the branding, more so than like whatever visual is going to happen. I think all of these people are going to bring in a visual that is going to be amazing, but I think the power is the digital services and public relations with how people are going to be searching for Bartlett. And the same when, if you guys are going to different trade shows and people go to look up Bartlett from these trade shows and to learn more about it, what's going to be popping up. And that has been my experience in the business world, and I did work for a public library that was a municipal library when we went through a rebrand. Web wasn't as what it is now way back then, but these are the things that I look at, and that's why I want to get that question answered, but that's what I suspect just by looking at the proposal, what happened, and why they're both worked on that. I think, you know, A5 probably started the visual process, and they brought this one in to get the digital and public relations for Woodstock.
So where would you, what would you choose?
Right.
I'll be honest, I would, based on like what I'm seeing here, without asking questions, I would choose McDaniels because of that. But I understand that A5 has done a great job, and who knows, they probably might take McDaniels in. But I also liked the structure of the first part of the branding, the way they structured that, and then how they pieced it out, because I think there's opportunity there for us to kind of pick and choose what we think we need. And you guys can agree or disagree.
Yeah, I do agree, and was going to suggest that you could invite one or both in for the April meeting if you'd like to give them 15 minutes or so to to pitch themselves.
I I was going to suggest that to see if it was feasible. I'd like to get some verbal personality type thing going on to see what their presentations are, get a feel for them.
So you're thinking, well, for all the commissioners, you're thinking invite both of them in?
Yeah,
I would agree.
why not?
Is there a timeline to make a decision here on this?
Yeah, what are the advantages of choosing today is my question.
It's not expected necessarily to choose today. The advantage really would be negligible. It would be just getting it going 1 month earlier. But, you know, like I said earlier, we're looking for this to be, we'd rather have it done better than quicker. So, you know, if you'd all feel more comfortable having representatives of A5 and McDaniels come here, I'm sure they can answer the questions about their proposals better than I could or any of us up here could.
Let me get this clear. Are you saying that instead of people calling in and asking questions about Bartlett, that this branding is going to answer their questions so they don't have to, they don't have to call here and ask?
No, this isn't replacing the typical process where we attract an Aldi or a microbrewery or a new industrial company. They're always going to call, they're always going to have to engage with the village. This is, like I said, kind of a little more outward bound, more marketing oriented. So it's not one or the other, it's both. This might lead to somebody calling.
I'm not suggesting they still won't call,
Right.
but I still don't see the bigger benefit of doing this.
Well, if you don't brand, we're not really putting the icing on the cake. We look like any other village. So, you know, this is what is going to be that visual, the thing that's going to make people think like, oh, that looks interesting, or I should check that out. You know, to Stephanie's point, talking about, you know, did you know that all these different restaurants were here and everything? So it's really the thing that catches people and gets them interested in it, whether they're people that are already in this village or people that are outside of the village. And then especially as we look at bringing businesses in, to Scott's point, talking about, you know, the quality of life. Does this look like someplace I'd want my family to be? You know, yeah, we can say we're one of the safest cities and have all of that, but showing that picture of what it looks like. It's kind of like staging a house, you know, before you sell it. It's very, very similar to that. So we're trying to stage the village so people can see why Bartlett.
Just to be clear, we are doing this, right? Like, the direction has been chosen to do it?
Yeah, I've heard to invite both in next month to give
No, I
presentations.
mean in general, like, we're gonna get branding and,
I mean, we're going to take your recommendation to the board, just like we do any. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it would be up to them to move forward, but I imagine, given the fact that it's in our strategic plan, and if they get a good positive recommendation, one would assume that they would move forward, yes.
I'd like to point out on the memorandum page where it has short-term complex, and it's highlighted, develop a community branding plan on there. I believe that developing that plan would also help with recruitment strategy to attract developers, continue to act on strategies to developing Railroad Avenue vacancies. So it's going to hit on some of the other goals. It's going to be a tool for us to use to hit on other goals.
Also, too, in terms of, like Trustee Erickson said, about staging the community, we're getting pretty close to being fully built out, but we have 750 people that we believe will be moving to West Bartlett in 59. We have an apartment complex downtown that you'll see dirt moving, I anticipate this spring. We have another pocket in the community where we're looking at the potential of 200 apartment units. So there's still a lot that we want to lure people in with a global mindset. There's still a lot of growth in this community that's going to occur the next few years, and just to be on the map and be on the radar and distinguish ourselves, I think will be a big part in the next few years.
Yeah, I think the content of the branding program is something that I feel like I could comment on more competently than I could comment on which one of these is best. I would defer to Stephanie or somebody who had expertise.
Always give that mic to the new people.
That's just a test for the first
Somebody who had expertise. I don't have an expertise in this area. You know, so I see the numbers and I see the pictures and I see what they've done, but you understand this better than I. Now, the content of what they've come up with, I feel like I could make a good opinion of what they're proposing, but which one of these is the best, other than what you've just commented on with the A5.
Yeah, and to be clear, I only said A5 because they had some statistical thing, and I led myself towards that, and I
about
agree with you completely. I have no clear vision of what it should be, or how to judge these guys. So I would have flip-flopped right away if Stephanie said, when she said clearly that it was the other one. So if we do one more round and get to meet the people, we'll do it that way. I don't know, in my opinion, that's kind of, I'm totally with you.
And I know you guys are going to get clarification on, the Woodstock piece of it, but I think one of the things that makes your point is that in the proposal on A5, which is page 15, their digital media budget was $6,000, whereas MCD's digital marketing campaign was $18,500. So clearly, they put more money into it. I'm thinking that that village used both of them, and that's something else we can consider as a commission, is parceling this. One company gets X amount and another company gets X amount. That's something else we can consider. It doesn't have to be one company necessarily.
Could we get clarification from Woodstock if that's what they did, and what, if they did do that, what was the advantage? In hindsight, do they feel that that was the smartest move, using two different ones?
Yeah, definitely. Some of these projects were done years ago, and sometimes it's hard to reach people who were involved with it. I've found making some of the calls, but we can clarify that.
Have you talked to anybody at Hanover Park since they went through it fairly recently?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was just a few years ago, yeah.
Do they have any recommendations, or is there something that they wish they would have done differently, or something that they would have looked for? Can you get any advice?
We speak with them frequently. That would be, yeah, absolutely.
One thing I want to point out, when he was mentioning the digital marketing and the costs there, like this one includes a suggested pay-per-click budget of $1,500 a month for 6 months. So half of that would be to actually pay for the advertising, not just developing and managing it. And I can tell you $1,500 is pretty much baseline if you're going to do pay-per-click. I spend at least double that every month.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I like the idea of having them come in and give a presentation.
And I will invite them both in second Monday night of April.
We have a motion to invite the two remaining candidates in. They have a verbal presentation. And has it been
Motion.
seconded?
I second.
Okay. Roll call, Tony?
Jerry Cabasco,
Yes?
Any ayes or nays?
Robert Perry,
Yes.
Nanette Gutenkopf. Bruce Suffern,
Yes.
Adam Lewinsky. Robert Gorski,
Yes.
and Kirsten Erickson.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
So would I be correct in saying that instead of the word branding, it's more of an advertising deal that the village is coming up with to advertise what the village has to offer?
Well, branding's the theory behind it, but it's a lot of marketing and advertising in general.
Advertising and marketing.
We would call the whole thing a branding campaign, a rebranding.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to have these different companies come here and explain what their branding is. Like I say, branding might be something that some are familiar if they're in the advertising and marketing world, but some of us aren't. And we'd be delighted to have them come and talk to us.
What are we looking for here now?
We already did the motion. Tony's going to invite them to come in, so we're ready
Yeah,
just to move down.
just our next item.
Yep.
Um,
Just call Tony to give his report.
I'm not clear what, economic indicator
Yep,
report.
that's Tony's report that he's got in here.
Hmm?
That's Tony's report that he's going to go through. So you can just ask Tony to go through his report. So just ask Tony to go through the economic indicator report. Just ask Tony to go through the economic indicator report.
Tony,
Yes, thank you.
discuss the economic indicator report?
Right, this was going to be on last month, so forgive me for having this item after a branding discussion. But what I don't have on tonight, because the packet would have been over 300 pages probably, is all the reports that I had attached last month. If you want to see them or any reports, as a matter of fact, I will bring one to Commissioner Suffern so he can see all the data that we utilized to come up with this. I'm going to do a quick background, super quick. About 8 years ago, this all ties into our branding, by the way. So we had a very high vacancy rate, lots of empty storefronts, lots of industrial space unfilled. And it was, I don't like to use the word crisis, but we were close to 30% vacant downtown and 20% through the whole community. So the EDC came up with a marketing plan and had some key performance indicators where we started measuring. That's when I started bringing this back every year at the beginning of the year for our economic indicators. So we know what's going on in our local economy, so we can make informed decisions. And anyhow, the EDC, that's before the BETA grant program was devised. That's before the pandemic, and then that real quick emergency grant that we put together. That was before a lot of things happened. But since that time, the village has implemented multiple business-friendly programs. I mentioned BETA, sales tax rebates. The board just approved a big sales tax rebate last Tuesday night, you probably heard about. Class 6B and Class 7 incentives, and generally just stepping up our marketing and trade show and outreach game to attract development to the village-owned properties like Site E, some of the village-owned land at 59 and Lake Street. So economic indicators, industrial, I'm not going to beat this to death. It's very good. You probably will never see this again. Last year, the industrial vacancy rate was 3.5%. I figured it couldn't go any lower, but it has. Our LoopNet and CoStar reports showed it at 0.9%. So it's pretty low. In terms of commercial, a lot of the spaces we talked about, we'd wanted to fill some of the vacancies in Town Center. So there's the bakery that opened. Early last year, I wasn't even saying at the EDC who it was, but that was one of our prospects. We had some restaurant prospects for the diner across the street that didn't pan out. And once again, we have, I would say, probably 2 prospects for that space right now. So really, we hope to fill it. But you can see that a lot of the, also, the buildings that were what I always call the chronic vacancies, the white garage behind JC's was a great example of something that was just, we talked about it at the EDC frequently, who would go in there. I offered full $50,000 beta grants probably to 5 different businesses that still all determined it wasn't worth it for them to buy that building, put that amount of capital into rehabbing it, even with a $50,000 grant. So that's been demolished. So we've done 2 things over the past few years. 1, filled a lot of empty spaces, and 2, demolished the ones that were never going to be filled. There's still some chronic vacancies in the town, but the vacancy rate is pretty low. Somewhere in there I put in, it's about 6% right now. Under 10% is considered strong, as our commercial banker, Ms. Erickson, will attest to. In my experience, most commercial loans for multi-unit properties usually bake in an automatic 10% vacancy for when they're analyzing the cash flow on it. So office, I say this every year too, that it's a blessing and a curse. We don't have a lot of office. We have a lot of little offices, a chiropractor here, a financial advisor there, stuff like that, a banks, stuff like that. But we don't have that one gigantic office, type of building that has 6,000 employees. And I say that it's a blessing and it's a curse because we don't have them. We don't have that kind of business that has, 3,000 professional people who are looking for lunch and gas and groceries every day. And it's been a blessing because a lot of the towns you'll read around here are trying to fill those because they're mostly empty. They're either working from home or they've moved to another state, or some of them have moved from the suburbs back into downtown Chicago. So we don't have that type of scenario. But the office vacancy, what do I have it, 6 to 7%? It's down to 4%. Just as a total FYI, there is somebody who purchased a property along Lake Street now who's proposing a little bit more medical office. So there might be some office space added to the mix in the next couple years. Jobs. Unfortunately, the Census Bureau on the map has not updated here since last year, and they're always a few years behind. It's frustrating. But I did order a pretty comprehensive report that I get every year called Jobs EQ, and we've been hovering the last few years just under that 10K mark of daytime employees here in Bartlett, and this year it went over 10,000, okay? It's not a gigantic number, but it's one of those nice round numbers that it's better to be above than below. Earlier, Commissioner Suffern asked about some statistics. That's one of the statistics that a lot of the quick service restaurants ask about. Those restaurants that want to be at the intersection of 59 and Stearns, where they have a drive-through and you can get in and out of there quickly, or maybe some of them don't, like the Jersey Mike's. but a lot of them like to look at what is our daytime population. I put an asterisk next to that because when it comes to Brewster Creek Business Park, there's so many more people going in and out of that business park every day than the 10,000. That 10,000 is village-wide. Let's say 60% of that is based out of Brewster Creek Business Park for jobs. So, but there's a lot more people that come in and out of the business park every day that are vendors and customers. Anyway, the economic indicators for jobs has been pretty good. The unemployment rate at the end of 2020, the pandemic first year was really high, 6.9. The end of 2021 was 3.1. And right now, it's about exactly the same. It's 3.2 village-wide. Sales, I had to check with our finance director. Why did our sales go from 260 million to 350? And if you remember, again, those of you who've been on the EDC for a while, when I started reporting this 8 years ago, it was under 200. We were happy to crack that 200 number. You know, I've been with the village 18 years. Back when I started looking at this, it was just around 100. So our sales are about three and a half times as high. But our finance director told me it's not because we've got all these new huge sales tax it's due to the Amazon tax, or the online sales tax has created. We have a lot of online shoppers in Bartlett, and as much as we all hate paying that tax based on where we live, that's a newer thing. I know I don't like paying it. It's boosted the village's sales tax by quite a bit. And I also want to mention that, you know, we broke it down by categories and by county. That's information that we have as well, too. So in terms of population, Scott mentioned that earlier, some of the residential projects that we have on our horizon. The population's been basically steady now for, you could say 13 years, because it was 41,000 at the 2010 census. But we've got, here's a beautiful rendering of the residences at Bartlett Station. We've had the grassland subdivision at 59 and West Bartlett start. We've got some other sites where we have some residential developers looking at it. So we do anticipate our residential population to grow over the next several years. Safety, I know Commissioner Perry and a lot of the other commissioners talk about this when I present this every year. And that is something I wanted to make mental note of to mention at the EDC. I was asked about that by an industrial business this year, or early this year, wanted some safety data about the village. Businesses that do a second or third shift, honestly, businesses that have a lot of women employees and are leaving at night on their own, it's something that the business owners are typically very concerned with. And we have a lot of safety, good safety data that we give out. It's something that's Bartlett, really, we're talking about branding a lot earlier. It's something that could be, it's not going to be our branding. Hi, Bartlett, we're a safe community, but it's part of what goes into making Bartlett what it is. Our great police force and just the overall safety in our community. So in terms of what the future holds, there you see a nice picture that one of our staff took when they were delivering some of the apparatus to more brewing on a, I was going to say on a snowy day, but whoa, lost track of that. Anyway, so that was some of the stuff we have coming up. It's been widely publicized that we've been working with Aldi for a long time, and they were before the village board last Tuesday night, and the board approved, if I may say so, a creative incentive that we put together. It's a three-part incentive. It's part upfront cash to help offset some of the engineering costs. It's a waiver of the customary building permit fees, and then it's a sales tax rebate until they meet a certain threshold. And altogether, those three elements amount to $500,000, which, was, like I said, was approved last Tuesday. So we've got a lot of stuff going on in town.
What's the size of the Aldi's, and what do they project their sales every year?
Well, two good questions. 19,432 square feet is the size of it. And in terms of projections, they will not tell you or me or anyone. The only people who know that are probably the Albrecht family in Germany and maybe some of their top executives. But what we did, I could probably talk about this deal for hours, but let me put it this way. We probably had a dozen meetings with them, probably had 30 or 40 more on the phone. And by them saying, no, that projection's too high, no, that projection's too low, and whittling it, I came up with the number of 12 million. They won't say that that's what their projection is, but they'll say it's going to be lower than 20 by a lot. They'll say it's lower than 15. They'll say it's higher than 10. So I mention that because that's how we helped craft the sales tax rebate as well. But I don't want you to put that number down in stone or publicize it. That's an estimate.
One tension.
It's a privately held company by, Albrecht means Aldi discount, or Aldi is Albrecht discount store. Just, you know, the names kind of merged, so the Albrecht family owns it, and it's privately
None of
held.
them are franchised. They're all owned by the Germans.
They're corporate, yeah. Mhm. They entered into a land lease at Streets of Bartlett. So they do long-term land lease, like some of the bigger business, like every Walgreens does that, every CVS does that, and every Aldi does that, unless they're in line in a shopping center.
Is that pretty much standard square footage for an Aldi?
It's larger. This is a new prototype
10,000
store.
twice as big,
When they started,
about 10,000.
like I said, I could talk about it all day, but when we first started looking,
Yours is big.
Aldi's were all, for many, many years, decades, they were all 16,000. Then they went up to 18,000. This is their latest prototype, 19,000 and some change.
Are there any other prototype stores like that around?
They told me a town that one's in, and I think I forgot, is it Algonquin?
There's one in Algonquin on Randall Road that they say is pretty much, if you look at that, that's kind of what you're looking at here.
Aldi has increased, I'm a frequent shopper. They've expanded their offerings dramatically. They have organics now. They've increased their, like I said, I could talk about Aldi all day, but so they've increased their store size because they've increased their SKU count over the past 4 or 5 years.
If I remember correctly, when they first came to America, they were like 5,000 square feet.
They were small.
Very small.
They were very small, stark, kind of quasi-warehouses.
Yeah, I think they
For many
didn't know
years.
how people were going to react it here in America, so they started off small, and eventually they got up to almost 20,000 square feet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about, it's a good way to look at it. Yeah, it's about half the size. Our Jewel's bigger than a lot of the Jewels are in other communities, but it's almost half the size of a typical Jewel.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the smaller ones.
What direction does that front face, the front door? Will that face Devon? Will it face the
It's
parking?
facing the inward of the shopping center, if that makes sense. Front door is not on Devon, it's not along Postamy, it's not along CVS, it's facing the front of the shopping center. So when you walk out the front door, you're looking at the Midway landing sign.
Okay, So the back of it will actually be facing the CVS.
Yeah, that and then Pasta Mia as well. Yep.
I think I was just in that one last week on Randall Road. I'm gonna have to go back, take another look at it.
They're very proud of their latest prototype, and it's going to attract a lot of visitors, not just shoppers, but when it opens, a lot of their corporate people are going to be visiting Bartlett. So the economic indicators look good. We've got some projects that we've kind of alluded to here over a long period of time, and they're coming to fruition. The next thing we really want to see get going is breaking ground on the apartment building on Site E.
And I know we've said it before, but I think that a lot of this is largely due to staff. I think you guys do a fabulous job.
I agree.
Bringing people into the community and promoting the community, and it shows.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. It's some of these take years to come to fruition. You wouldn't believe it. Well, some of you would believe it.
Yeah, you probably don't hear them kind words often enough.
No,
Yeah.
no, but it's,
Yeah. Sometimes even getting a new restaurant in, it'll take a few years.
but you don't give up, obviously, so persistence pays off.
When's the estimated ribbon cutting for Marlboro?
I'm going to punt that to Scott. I mean, we're told it's a moving target.
Yeah, it is a moving target. I mean, there are things that the public may not see. I'll give you an example. A few months ago, there were some hurdles in terms of supply chain logistics. Apart from ComEd, that adapts to their transformer, wasn't available for months. All sorts of things just keep popping up, but they continue to move forward. They typically have about a half a dozen people there every day. I don't like guessing, but if I were to guess, I'd say sometime in May.
They have a hiring sign now, so it's got to be sometime soon. Quick question on Site E, actually. Is that expected to be this year?
It is, yeah. That deal was tied in with the Aldi deal, and at the village board meeting prior to the last meeting, there was a third amendment to the real estate deal with MMAJ LLC, which is Manny Rafidia's development company. So that incentive in turn kicked in his ability to sign the land lease with Aldi. So those two things were tied in together. And long story short, he also would like to build in a similar time frame that Aldi would like to build in, and break ground this spring and be done as soon as he can. He wants to start getting people in there paying rent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way that Hyundai dealer on Lake Street is going, they might be open for spring.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that a whole lot at EDC. That was like a biggest deal we worked on last year.
Got a couple buildings up there, and they're working all the time. I see them work on Saturdays.
They're highly motivated to get that in as well. And I will say in the most general sense that that project has attracted the attention of other similar businesses. So, I mean, we're not done developing that corridor.
Other dealerships?
Well, we'll see. That would be nice. I mean, it is a targeted
Would be the
type of
best.
business. It's a very lucrative, good business to have in town. We want to have even higher sales tax than the 350 when I report it next year.
Well, it seems to cover new business pretty thoroughly. Thanks, Tony. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.